Good morning, friends. Welcome back to our lab. I'm Dr. Small, Executive Director of A Stronger Foundation, and I'm glad to have you all back. Today, we're going to be talking about the art of education, right? So, that topic is going to just explore the function of education. Sometimes we may have a skewed understanding of what the purpose of education actually is, right? Because we see it just as a way of educating children to learn their ABCs, the basics, learning primary and middle school math and reading skills. But, this whole podcast challenges you to see it as a preparation for one's livelihood, as the ethical training for the human species. That's what we challenge you to do, is to see it as such. All right. And if you're going to see it as such, you understand it. Every species have method for survival. You have survival of the fittest. And so the human race also have their survival training, which is the local education. And that is why you see that every child, it's law, it's mandated that every single person attends school during childhood, because that's the minimum ethical response to a life, is that they experience the basic training to ensure their survival. Where we get in trouble is when we begin to see education for what it's not. So let's talk about what education is. Education is there to prepare a human to be able to survive, because you have to do at least that. That means that education is there to prepare one to be able to get a job, to take care of themselves later in life. So they may have basic skills such as being able to operate a cash register, understanding the basics of giving back change. So when we talk about the art of education, one key word that comes to mind is destination. You have to understand that the destination of general education is survival. Now, earlier I said that sometimes we have a skewed view and a skewed understanding of the purpose of education, and we think that education is designed to align children to thrive. That is not the key or core responsibility for an educator. An educator educates. That means their role, since the child begins school, is to serve the standards, introduce the standards. Now, in most curriculum, it is designed so that as the standards are introduced, activities follow in hopes of building that standard all the way up the taxonomy, as we've spoken about. But there are other hindering factors that prevent that in the majority of learners, because there's so many different brain elements that are at play during learning and in the learning environment. So the destination is survival. Education, general education, the regular education, it takes learners to the entrance of success, I want to say. And you know our definition of success. All right. When you graduate with only general education, you're able to go and work in factories or just general survival job. You have general survival skills. All right. It's when you add on to that education that you're able to build greater success skills. And when you tie all of that in with your life purpose, which if you don't know your life purpose, how would you know how to tie it all together? All right. So, well, part of our skewed view is that we're expecting the general education to align our children with their purpose. That is not their responsibility. Now, if you have a special school, and that is why we start charter schools, because somebody believe, hey, this general education is going to give your child a career and it's going to give them a job, but it's not going to align them with purpose. And if you've been following along with us, you understand that we believe it's unethical just to release children with just enough skills to survive, which in this time and day, we understand that's beginning to be much harder just to survive. We have an increase in homelessness. We have an increase in confusion. People who are graduating with a paper in their hand, diploma, but absolutely no direction. They don't know where to go. They don't know where to start. They know they want to make a lot of money, but they don't understand much more. And they begin to fall apart that early, right? So, yes, the general education, their only responsibility is to instill survival skills, which I believe they do. They have a script that they're reading nowadays. So parents can't hardly say certain skills were not introduced because a teacher could come back or a district can come back and say, the teacher read this to your child and they introduced the skill to your child. They gave little activities to help to bring your child up to the top. But remember, we have so much more going on that hinders learning. And so a stronger foundation, the role that we play, remember, is that we are that supplement that is going to tie in what they're learning just for survival skill. And we're going to implement that success mindset, okay, that growth mindset. And we're going to tie them all together. That's going to just be a game changer for this individual. Okay. And with the general education, as you can see, because gaps are developing, children are dropping off at the drop off zone, then, that's going to align children with workforce skills. Okay. But the general education, when we talk about destination, because remember, our topic here is the art of education. The art of education, general education, is to align children with basal skills that enhances their chance of survival. Now, I want to ask a question. Why do people send children to school? Or why did we even go through school? Right? Did we go to school only so that we can survive? And actually, I just really need to direct that question at a child, because now that we are already adults, it's not that we had that controlling role or that determining role when we were being sent to school. Our parents had those roles. So now for your child, why are you sending your child to school? Why do you send your child to school? Again, we understand that it's a legal mandate. And if you don't, then there are legal consequences for you. We understand that. But outside of that, why do you send your child to school? Now that we've discussed the whole idea behind the destination, and we understand that the destination of a regular general public education or even private is to align the child with survival skills. So now that we know that, is that why you're sending your child to school? Just so that they can leave school and be able to survive? That's it? When you understand what survival now looks like, when more and more children are graduating unprepared to succeed in life, where more and more children are repeating a pattern of economic disparities, just like the parents before them. And it was based on the kind of education that their parents received. It was based on the quality of that education. It was based on the value that was put on that education from the parents. So are we going to follow the same pattern with our children? Is that why we're sending them to school, just so they can survive? Just so they can go on to college? Because see, a lot of children are just entering college, or they are just entering college. They don't know what to do, so they just go to college. But you want your child, it would be better if they enter college knowing what they want to do. And knowing what you want to do doesn't just mean a random career where you picked it because it makes good money. We're talking about understanding your purpose before you graduate high school. That is what's happening with a stronger foundation. That is our goal. That is our mission. Okay. And that is what we work on with our candidates. We want them to succeed and have a fulfilling and a meaningful life. Okay. Instead of the average where they graduate and a decade pass and they're still trying to figure out. Don't forget, we have a lot of 26-year-old that's still confused. And then they turn 32, still confused. And a lot of times by then they're starting their families as confused parents. Okay, how can confused parents raise successful children? Right? We're allowing them, we're reenacting the life of the living dead, following without an understanding. So what that means is that we know there's a pattern for school. You send your children to school as early as preschool, and they go through the whole motion all the way through the 12th grade. Why? Because that's what everyone else do. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what the law tells you to do. So we're just following like followers and like robots, just following through. Not sure why. We just know that's what we're supposed to do, so we're doing it. And then again, once they graduate from high school, we know the right thing to do according to society's rule is just to go into college, and you have to pick something. And I think in some ways that's good, because, it's better. Even if your child don't know what they want to do, still send them on if that's what you want to do. And if that's what they want to do, send them on to college. But by all means, it's just, again, reenacting the life of the living dead. And what that means is that when you just graduate from high school and you just enter college, again, you're following in a robotic pattern where you graduate from college now and you have a career, but you're still unfulfilled. There's no meaning, and you know it. You might be excited for the first few years in that career, in that field, but as soon as you start to hear that voice calling you again saying, that's not your purpose, that's not the developed talent that was placed inside of you when you were designing, when you were created. So understand the art of education deals with destination, and the reason, the function of the word art, it just means that the education system is not confused about that. They understand their role, and that their role is to prepare each person with survival skills so that they can survive in life. Now, sometimes when we see that people are not surviving, and don't forget there are different levels of survival, because the people who are homeless, I mean, in some ways they are surviving. They're not dead, they're alive. And it might be uncomfortable or not the ideal situation. It's not the ideal form of survival, but still somehow surviving. And a lot of people who haven't found their purpose, that's like they're physically alive, but mentally and psychologically they're dead. That's what we call dead man walking. And we're raising a lot of children that's just following that pattern. They're on a conveyor belt. Okay, the moment we're born, our conveyor belt begins to move and we're on it. And the times that we're supposed to encourage our children, start taking bigger steps on your conveyor belt, or start jogging on your conveyor belt, or start running and leaping. And we don't always do that because we ourselves are confused about it. But nothing to be confused about. If you prepare your child to succeed, that's what will happen. But if you don't prepare them to succeed, you're preparing them to fail. There's no way around it. Parents don't like to hear it. We don't like to acknowledge it. We don't like to accept it. It doesn't sound good. But the truth is going to set us free. And the truth is going to set our children free. Because when we allow them to grow up without a mindset for success, without teaching them how to manipulate the systems that we have talked about in some of our previous podcasts, they grow up still not knowing how to be their best self, how to keep that disciplined version of themselves forward. They don't understand how to enable their forward movements. They get stuck, they get trapped into lethargic lifestyles that hinders them for a very long time. So, art of education. The art of education, the system is intact. I know they undergo a lot of criticism, and I'm not here to be an advocate or support. I'm not taking sides, but I am saying spending time focusing on what the education system isn't doing, saying that the curriculum is not right, because what's wrong with it? I mean, if they're teaching, here we go again with the fraction, but they're teaching the child how to solve fractions, how to convert fractions to decimals, to percentages, how to do the slope intercept, teaching them algebraic functions, and going back to third grade, subtracting across zeros, then what is wrong? The skills are being taught. Now, a curriculum could never satisfy every single individual, but it's definitely an intact curriculum, and it is fulfilling its task. The task it's supposed to fulfill. It is fulfilling it. Okay, so I know the complaints that I hear about the education system and the curriculum and the design is that people want to have more books that caters to their own cultures. That's what I hear a lot of. But I feel like a lot of times that's just neither here or there. I'm just saying it's not something that we should shut down a whole system for. I feel like we could just have a supplement, like a stronger foundation, where we will read those books. We believe every culture should understand their history. They should know what was done for them. They should understand the sacrifices of their ancestors. And so if the school curriculum is not doing that, then by all means, invest in an academic success plan so that your child can get what they need and deserve to know. So a stronger foundation, right? When we're talking about destination now, we know the destination of the average general education system. But then when you have a stronger foundation, remember what that means. It means if the district is giving them a strong foundation and that's aligning them with survival, then you want a supplemental program like a stronger foundation and the academic success plan for kid, which is going to have a different destination. Our destination is going to pick them up from survival to thriving, to finding their purpose. All right. So you can't be upset at the education system when their role, which they are very aware of their role, which is to provide survival skill. Are we saying that they are not providing survival skills? Because remember, survival skills is not the same as thrival skills. I just made that word up. I don't know if it's a real word, but thriving. Thriving is when you excel, okay? And the school system, their big role is to align a person to graduate and be able to go and get a regular job, okay? You may not be able to get to all the fruits on your tree, right? You may not be able to get that dream house or drive that dream car, okay? Or take your dream vacations, but you are able to survive. You're able to buy, maybe you can afford these days. What can we afford, right? But in general, we can afford the minimum of survival. I'm actually so scared to say it anymore with this inflation, but basically we can afford to live somehow. All right. So with a stronger foundation, our destination is for them to be able to thrive and for them to align with purpose. Our destination is purpose. Put it that way. All right. And so how do we achieve this? All right. Because what we do is we restore hope to learning. We restore the hope of education. Okay. And the one thing that we do very well is that we enhance accountability. That's what we do very, very well. We're very good with accountability and in our delivery, the way we deliver the skills. We have children who become scholars and just become very strong in their aptitude for learning, and they build very strong self-efficacy in which they believe that they will succeed in the things that they try. And that's what we pride ourselves on, is that we understand that we're in these children's life for a very brief period. So within 36 months, we make sure that our children develop what we promise. And we're not afraid to give guarantees because we understand with the right conditions and with the conditions that we do set and with what we've seen already, the evidence that we have, we know that we can easily and proudly present that within 36 months, any child without neurological learning disabilities, sustained learning disabilities, we know that these children, because we've seen it, there was a time that I always said, we don't cater to the children that have severe neurological disabilities. That's what we used to say. And that's because we were not at that time staffed for these children. However, we did get children in. We have parents that are very adamant about our program. The ones that know it, they have a lot of faith in the program. And we know parents have said, listen, we know that you weren't staffed for that at that time, but we still wanted our kids to come. And we have witnessed those children who we definitely didn't want to make guarantees because we weren't staffed for that at that time. We were just brand new. And parents said, listen, I would rather put the child in and just let them get what they can get. And to my surprise, um, we've seen such changes that, wow, I don't want to get into anyone's business. I would never do that. But the changes we've seen is that, wow, they can do normal learning activities. They can succeed at the normal skills. Some of those children that have these IEP plans that says can't do this, can't do that, we've seen them do it. All right. And on the topic of IEP, all right, one of the issues I have with IEPs is that in my career as an educator, I have yet to see a child who was released from an IEP. When your child have an IEP, it seems like these disabilities follow them throughout, which Kind of makes sense because remember, if they're developing these gaps in primary school and these gaps are not being closed, they're being treated, but they're not being closed because there's a lack of accountability. So the treatments that they're receiving, what's the destination of that? And what's the accountability? Because we want them closed, but if we don't have that accountability, they're not going to close. It's just going to be like wetting the surface, but not really closing the gaps. And that's what they need. We need children to get off the IEPs, get off the crutch, and get healed. No one wants to be on medication for the rest of their lives. So why don't we begin to incorporate the academic success plan for kids? It's an ethical approach. And it's the only approach that I'm aware of that successfully addresses all learning gaps, not half, not a quarter, not a third. All the learning gaps are addressed especially when the child enters at the great period where they have their window of opportunity and when they still have neurons that still need to make connections. We could quickly advance that child using our strategies. And with a stronger foundation, we're not self-made. That means we don't come up with these theories that I've talked about that impact learning. These are educational theories that were researched by educational psychologists and researchers who have released their studies and show that all of these concepts and ideas and theories are based on sound research. So a stronger foundation has designed the academic success plan for kids, which is designed to align kids with purpose, right? So what we've done to date, what we've done as the school system, we have accepted mediocrity and mediocre performance from our children as the norm. Why? Because to date we haven't found an ethical method for changing the circumstances. But Dr. Small has introduced to you the product, the academic success plan for children, for kids, right? And that serves children in kindergarten through 8th grade. And children, one of my favorite products that we have to implement at times when the children are past that stage, because remember the academic success plan for kids, we enroll children in kindergarten through 2nd grade, and we do that on a purpose because they're the ones that we can give that guarantee to, okay? And remember, any program can be successful if they follow this plan. If your child's teacher was able to work with them around the clock, then they would be able to achieve everything that we're telling you as well, as long as they're implementing the same elements. We're implementing the mindset development consistently. We are developing the educational enrichment consistently. And we have a beautiful product that reinforces all the learning skills that allows our students and our scholars to achieve the advancement, the academic advancement. And children who enter our program between kindergarten and 2nd grade has mastered that jump, that leap, that academic advancement at 2 academic school years ahead. And not just in 1 or 2 skills. We're talking about a well-rounded scholar. And so we would love for our product to gain the attention it needs and the recognition, so that not just so that we can say, oh, look, we designed an awesome program, because this is not a career for Dr. Small. This is Dr. Small's calling. And when it's your calling, it's not about you winning. And for us, it's about our scholars winning. See, there's only one way for Dr. Small to win, and that's when children win. And the only way for them to win is to be aligned with their life purpose, because anything less, anything else, that's what I call injustice. Is allowing them to forfeit what their highest potential could have been, what their highest dreams could have been. Because you understand me, that when a child graduates from high school with a rocky and a shaky foundation, it's almost like putting them on quicksand, a wide quicksand. Not that the quicksand is so small that they can grab onto something, but when you allow them to forfeit the period when they were supposed to develop that strong academic foundation. And remember, there's a method to our theory. We're not just saying develop children who graduate in the top 1% of high school. And so they're the smartest, the most brilliant people in the whole world. But they don't know what to do with themselves. They still don't know. They're afraid to step out. With all that brilliance, they're scared. They're scared of failing. They're afraid of, what if it doesn't work? What if I fail? What if nobody responds? What if? A bunch of what if. And it keeps them trapped right there in themselves with all their degrees behind them. This is Dr. Small's mission. This is a calling. Okay? We're not here for recognition. We're not here for money to get rich. I always say to people, if I had $1 billion, what am I going to do with it? Right? I personally am not into driving 6 cars. I don't need 6 cars in a driveway. I don't need a house that's so big that I can't even walk through it every day. Right? I don't need clothes that cost $1,000 when, who wants to wear the same outfit 20 and 30 times, right? We normally make sense to invest. If you have that money, invest it into building others, into your purpose. That's what would happen, right? So we win as an organization when we successfully align children with their purpose. It's not enough when they graduate and they walk across the stage and we scream, yeah, you did it. Look at you. You got survival skills. Yeah, that's good. But we know that's not good enough. That's not good enough. That's why we have so many people now that we're so busy. There's no time to meet up with your friends and your families. Can't go to the park and sit as a family and just relax. We always having to work, work, work. And that's because we're working jobs and we're working careers. And we're always fighting to be promoted. We're fighting for the next level instead of understanding this is our purpose. When you have your purpose, you're fulfilled. And all your needs are filled. You don't find yourself wanting and constantly, down and depressed and thinking about what you don't have. All right, so we did really great. We talked about the art of education, and that education is fulfilling its role. Their only promise to you is that your child, when they leave school, if they don't drop out, they should have survival skills. So if you're expecting something else from your school system, then that's on you, right? What I'm going to leave you with is we understand, as a quick summary, that the art of education deals with destination, right? The destination of completing the full educational system from kindergarten, preschool to grade 12 and graduating is to align your child with survival skills. That's their role, and they know their role. Okay, so when we talk back, we're going to pick up from there. We're going to elaborate. Okay, so our session today, our topic dealt with the art of education. And we're going to come back and discuss how a stronger foundation enhances the art of education. All right? I love it. So listen, in the meantime, while we're away, remember, I don't know how long you're going to be away or how long, or if you're going to jump onto the next session, but I want you to continue to think about your goals in life and how you can continue to align yourself with purpose. You might think it's going to take a lot of money but it's not that difficult, right? Eventually I'll get to the part where I can focus on adults. Right now we focus on aligning children because we want to break some of these cycles. We don't want them to just to tread the same path, the same pattern. We don't want them in sinking sand where it's so wide that no matter what they do later in life, they're trapped. They just seem like they're going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. All right. Let's make this happen together. This is the solution for the educational problem. We can change the trajectory of our children's life. We can change the future, the economic disparities. We can change how many people are struggling and suffering, right? We can help more people to not lose their minds. We can help more people to align with themselves and so that they'll be whole. Less people to feel divided and conflicted. All right. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we're a team and that you're working together to make our children become their best selves. All right. Thank you so much. And I will see you in the next video.